Welcome to ICCCASU 4. One of the things that differentiate humanity from other species is our insatiability, our desires to reach high, to excel. Yet, our world today continues to experience many multidimensional challenges that sparks in us the desire to work for a more equitable, beautiful, healthy, and just society. And this is why we're here today. The International Conference on Canadian, Chinese, and African Sustainable Urbanization, ICCCASU, is an international think tank for promoting sustainable and inclusive urban development. Urbanization has no boundaries, and over the past several years, ICCCASU has proven to be reliable, authoritative, and effective in developing networks among urban researchers and practitioners worldwide. To date, ICCCASU has mounted 3 conference and training opportunities. ICCCASU 1 was held in Ottawa in 2015. ICCCASU 2, in conjunction with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development in Yaoundé, Cameroon in 2017. In the summer of 2019, ICCCASU 3 took place in Chengdu, China, in partnership with the China Center for Urban Development. In 2016, ICCCASU's team was invited to join the official Canadian delegation to United Nations Habitat 3 Summit in Quito, and in February 2020, it mounted a workshop in Abu Dhabi for the 10th World Urban Forum. The scientific and policy papers presented at the ICCCASU conference that are published in academic journals become important references for scholars, professionals, and policymakers working in sustainable development across the globe. Recently, ICCCASU signed an agreement with Springer to create a new Springer book series called City Development, Issues and Best Practices. In other words, ICCCASU is more than a series of conferences, workshops, research projects, and publications. It's an ongoing dialogue between a wide range of experts and decision makers engaged in sustainable urban development on a global scale. On behalf of the organizing committee, it is our pleasure to welcome you to the 4th International Conference on Canadian, Chinese, and African Sustainable Urbanization. Density, diversity, and mobility. The city in an era of cascading risks. During these 4 days, over 200 scholars, practitioners, and policymakers from 39 countries and regions across multiple disciplines will discuss, debate, and rethink the post-pandemic cities in Canada, China, Africa, and other parts of the world. Welcome.
Distingués invités, honorables participants, bienvenue à ICCCASU 4. L'une des choses qui différencie l'humanité des autres espèces est notre insatiabilité, notre désir d'atteindre des sommets et d'exceller. Pourtant, notre monde d'aujourd'hui continue à faire face à de nombreux défis multidimensionnels qui suscitent en nous des désirs de travailler pour une société plus équitable, plus belle, plus saine et plus juste. Et c'est pourquoi nous sommes ici aujourd'hui. La conférence internationale sur l'urbanisation durable du Canada, de la Chine et de l'Afrique ICCCASU est un groupe de réflexion international pour la promotion d'un développement urbain durable et inclusif. L'urbanisation n'a pas de frontières autant pour moi, et au cours des dernières années, ICCCASU a prouvé qu'elle était fiable et qu'elle faisait autorité et qu'elle était efficace dans le monde du développement des réseaux entre les chercheurs, les praticiens urbains à travers le monde. À ce jour, ICCCASU a organisé 3 conférences et offert des formations, notamment ICCCASU 1 à Ottawa en 2015, ICCCASU 2 en collaboration avec le ministère de l'Habitat et du Développement urbain du Cameroun en 2007, ICCCASU 3 en 2009 à Chengdu en Chine avec le Centre chinois de développement urbain. En 2016, l'équipe d'ICCCASU a été invitée à se joindre à la délégation canadienne officielle au sommet Habitat 3 des Nations Unies à Quito, et en février 2020, elle a organisé un atelier à Abu Dhabi lors du 10e Forum urbain mondial. Les documents scientifiques et les politiques présentées lors des conférences d'ICCCASU et publiées dans des revues universitaires deviennent une référence importante pour les universitaires, les professionnels et les décideurs qui travaillent dans le domaine et du développement durable à travers le monde. Récemment, ICCCASU a signé un accord avec Springer pour créer une nouvelle série intitulée City Development Issues and Best Practices. En d'autres termes, ICCCASU est plus qu'une série de conférences, d'ateliers, de projets de recherche et de publications. C'est un espace de dialogue permanent entre un large éventail d'experts et de décideurs engagés dans le développement urbain durable à l'échelle planétaire. Au nom du comité d'organisation, nous avons le plaisir de vous souhaiter la bienvenue à ICCCASU 4. Et donc le thème porte sur densité, diversification, densité, diversité, mobilité, la ville à l'ère des risques en cascade. Pendant ces 4 jours, plus de 200 universitaires, praticiens et décideurs de 39 pays et régions et de multiples disciplines discuteront, débattront et repenseront la ville et les villes post-pandémie au Canada, en Chine, en Afrique et dans d'autres parties du monde. Sur ce, je vais donc, avec Lisa, vous présenter les personnalités invitées à cette séquence d'ouverture officielle d'ICCCASU 4. Distingués invités, mesdames et messieurs, chers panélistes, permettez-moi de présenter maintenant quelques intervenants. Nous allons commencer par Maïmouna Maud Sharif, directrice exécutive d'ONU Habitat depuis janvier 2018. ONU Habitat, le programme des Nations Unies pour les établissements humains. Avant sa nomination, elle était maire dans la municipalité de Penang, en Malaisie. Madame Maud Sharif est titulaire d'une maîtrise en urbanisme de l'Université des sciences de Malaisie. Elle est également une championne de la planification et de la budgétisation participative intégrant la dimension genre dans le processus donc, de gouvernance. Elle a reçu plusieurs prix, donc le prix de l'urbanisme de l'année, décerné par l'Institut malaisien des urbanistes en 2014, et le prix de la contribution exceptionnelle, reçu à Quito en 2016 pour sa contribution à la planification durable. En janvier 2018, le livre record de Malaisie lui a décerné le prix pour avoir été la première femme asiatique à être nommée directrice exécutive d'ONU Habitat. Veuillez vous joindre à Luisa et à moi pour souhaiter la bienvenue à Maïmouna Maud Sharif.
Now, let me introduce you to Maïmouna Maud Sharif. She is the Executive Director of the United Nations Human Settlements Program, UN Habitat, since January 2018. Prior to this appointment, Ms. Sharif was the Mayor of the City Council of the Penang Island, Malaysia. She holds a Master's of Science in Planning Studies from the Malaysia Science University. She's also a champion of gender-responsive participatory budgeting and planning, integrating gender perspectives into the governance process. She's received many awards, such as the Planet of the Year by the Malaysian Institute of Planners in 2014, and the Global Human Settlements Outstanding Contribution Award to the Habitat 3 in Quito for her contribution in sustainable planning. On January 2018, she received an award from the Malaysia Book of Records, recognizing her for being the first Asian woman to be appointed as Executive Director of UN Habitat. Please join me welcoming Mrs. Maimuna Modcher. Thank you.
It is a pleasure for me to open the fourth session of the International Conference on Canadian, Chinese, and African Sustainable Urbanization, centered around the topic of density, diversity, and mobility, the city in an era of cascading risks. UN Habitat has been actively involved in conceptualizing, planning, and organizing this important series of events, including the first session in 2015 in Ottawa, the second in 2017 in Yaoundé, and the third in 2019 in Chengdu. Since its inception, this international conference provided technical support for the elaborations of the business plan of the future Regional Center of Excellence for Sustainable Urban Development in Africa, in liaison with Government of Cameroon, facilitated the establishment of a research network on cities and industrial processing zones along the historic Silk Road trade route with the Southeast University in China. And today, after a year and a half into COVID-19 pandemic, the re-examination of cities and their contribution to global development is particularly essential. In his policy brief on COVID-19 in an urban world, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres noted that urban areas are ground zero of the COVID-19 pandemic, with 90% of reported cases. Cities are bearing the brunt of the crisis, many with strained health system, inadequate water and sanitation services, and other challenges, he added. At the regional level, UN Habitat, in collaboration with UNECA, UCLG Africa, UNCDF, and Shelter Afrique, have developed the flagship program on COVID-19 and cities in Africa to guide policy response and green recovery in urban settings. This fourth conference on cascading risks is timely because the world is at the crossroad of searching for innovative ideas to finding sustainable solutions for the urban poor, who are the most affected by unplanned and disorderly urban growth. UN Habitat World Cities Report 2020 look at the value of sustainable urbanization and highlights the opportunities and challenges of sustainable urbanization in the post-pandemic era, with a focus on urban economy, society, and environment. This fourth conference is well suited in this perspective, as it revisits the challenges and solutions of living in societies with multiple and overlapping risks. As this year marks the 5th anniversary of the New Urban Agenda, as well as the midterm evaluation of its implementation, the outcomes of this conference will be a stepping stone for scholars and researchers to assess the progress made so far. This will be shared during the high-level dialogue on the New Urban Agenda next April in New York. I would like to invite all partners to join this important event next year in New York to take stock of the new urban agenda and SDG 11. I thank the supporters and organizers of this event for their commitment to the new urban agenda and implementation of the Abu Dhabi Declared Actions following the 10th World Urban Forum. UN Habitat will share highlights of its recent report on cities and pandemics, which will provide approaches for integrating health in urban and territorial planning. The training organized during the pre-event brought together scholars, local authorities, and students to exchange on the principles and preventive mechanisms to promote healthier and more resilient cities. I strongly believe that the debates between decision makers and scholars will inspire new ways to address the threat of risk and contribute to building resilient cities and communities. I wish you fruitful discussions. Thank you.
Honorable Wen Po Yu is a Canadian senator since November 2016. And for more than 30 years, he has worked on public policy issues related to Canada-Asian relations. As senator, he has supported motions demonstrating the link between migration and prosperity, among others. Until 2014, he was the president and CEO of the Asian Pacific Foundation of Canada, a Vancouver-based think tank where he continues to serve as a distinguished East Asian Fellow. Please join me in welcoming Honorable Wen Po Yu.
Good day, I'm Yuen Pa Wu, Senator for British Columbia. It is my pleasure to offer brief remarks at the start of the ICCCASU conference. I would like to congratulate the organizers for bringing together such an impressive roster of speakers and for making possible this event despite the challenges. I wish we could be assembled in person for this conference and that friends from around the world can savor the beauty of Montreal in the summer. But there are downsides to having a conference in as pleasant a location as Montreal because of the constant lure of its attractions. So perhaps it is just as well that we are doing this by video and giving our full attention to the important discussions to come. I am intrigued by the concept of ICCCASU, which compares urbanization ideas and practices among cities in Canada, Africa, and China. There was a time when cities in the industrialized world would balk at the suggestion that they had anything to learn from counterparts in developing countries, and I'm glad that this conference rejects that premise. That said, the urbanization challenges faced in our respective countries have unique geographic, historical, political, and social contexts, and it is by first understanding those unique circumstances that we can begin to look at solutions to common challenges. I am not an expert on urbanization, but I live in a Canadian city that is considered big by Canadian standards, Vancouver, and I'm acutely aware of the challenges faced by my metropolis. These include homelessness, affordable housing, congestion, decaying infrastructure, unequal access to public services, loss of community, racism, and problems of addiction and mental health. COVID-19 has exacerbated some of these problems and has exposed the differential impact of a highly contagious virus on different segments of society living in different geographies. Not to reduce all of a city's problems to one factor, but an overarching challenge for large municipalities in Canada is the relatively limited powers of big cities in making decisions about their future and, crucially, raising the money to finance urban services and infrastructure. Municipalities are responsible for funding all the important services that are required for a well-functioning city, such as transit, policing and fire services, social assistance, urban infrastructure, etc. But their ability to raise money to support these activities is constrained by the provinces. This is not an easy problem to overcome because our Canadian Constitution says municipalities are creatures of the provinces. In effect, this means that provinces can determine what responsibilities municipalities must provide and how they can go about actually raising the revenue. In short, municipalities have responsibilities without commensurate power, whereas provinces have power without the responsibility to deliver municipal services. The cascading effect of this governance deficit is that municipalities cannot collect revenue from corporate or sales taxes and have to rely on much of their revenue from property taxes, which in turn makes it difficult for cities to properly tackle the problem of housing affordability. This governance problem, combined with the fact that there is really no tradition in Canada of large-scale public housing, has made the affordability problem particularly acute in our major cities. Unfortunately, the quest for easy answers to the housing problem has led to gross generalizations and simplistic solutions that can be stigmatizing for some visible minority communities. That has in turn undermined social inclusion and cohesion, which is unfortunate because these cities have historically been places where innovation and creativity flourish precisely because of the diversity of humankind that is drawn to cities. I imagine that friends from Africa and China can also point to examples of social policies and practices that lead to discrimination and repression of thought and action in their cities, all of which undermines the very essence of why cities matter. Finally, a word about environmental sustainability. It is well known that the ecological footprint of cities in terms of GHG emissions and other forms of environmental degradation far exceeds the geographic imprint of the city limits. That, in a sense, is not unexpected because the productive capacity of the city also far exceeds its physical footprint. But with climate change now an existential threat to humanity, and with the viability of some cities dependent on humanity's ability to stop global warming, municipal leaders are going to have to play a leading role in reducing their carbon emissions. If our big city leaders don't lead, there is no reason to expect that small town and rural citizens will act. This again goes back to the issue of municipal governance, and in the Canadian context, the constrained powers of cities to plan, to act, and to finance their plans and actions. Congratulations again to the organizers on this conference. I wish for you, like the cities you will be discussing, that the conference sessions will be noisy, a little chaotic, full of surprises, and totally exhilarating. That is why and how cities work. And that is how you can help us all make cities work better. Thank you.
Ambassador Claver Gatete is the Minister of Infrastructure in Rwanda since April 2018. Ambassador Gatete holds a Master's in Agriculture of Economics from the University of British Columbia in Canada. Prior to his appointed, he served as Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Governor of the National Bank of Rwanda, and Rwanda's Ambassador to the United Kingdom, Ireland, and Iceland. Please join me in welcoming Ambassador Claver Gatete.
The members and board of directors of ICCCASU, Executive Director, UN Habitat, the officials representing UN Habitat and the University of Ottawa, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. I wish to bring you warm greetings from the Republic of Rwanda, and especially from my President, His Excellency Paul Kagame. I join other speakers in expressing my gratitude to the government and the people of Canada for hosting the fourth session of the International Conference on Canadian, Chinese, and African Sustainable Urbanization, ICCCASU, both physically and virtually. I also want to commend the ICCCASU board, UN Habitat and University of Ottawa for organizing this event under the theme Density, Diversity and Mobility despite the global pandemic of COVID-19. This will enable and facilitate the deep understanding of sustainable urbanization in the implementation of Sustainable Development Goals and new urban agenda progress with almost 9 years remaining. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, in many African countries, the rapid rate of urbanization is a well-documented phenomenon that needs to be well-directed and coordinated. The government of Rwanda embraced sustainable urbanization as an engine of socio-economic and human settlement development. It has set an ambitious target of reaching an urbanization rate of 35% by 2024 from 18.4% in 2017. According to Vision 2050, the government of Rwanda plans to become an upper middle income country by 2035, with 50% of its population living in urban areas, and a high income country by 2050 with 70% urbanization. The growing understanding of the dynamics involved in the urban development of our cities has led to a number of innovative approaches and tools to solve the dilemma of urban expansion and climate change. To mitigate climate change and build urban resilience, Rwanda has planned to tackle the main sources of greenhouse gas emissions attributable to cities. These include 1. Energy efficiency in buildings, including electricity consumption. 2. Urban form. 3. Urban transport. And 4. Urban employment. These will respectively be addressed through various mechanisms that include, but not limited to, 1. Enforcement of green building minimum compliance requirements. 2. Promotion of denser mixed use and socially inclusive urban developments. 3. Facilitating the transition from fuel-reliant urban transport to electric mobility. And 4. Mass rapid transport, cycling, and creation of pedestrian walkways, among others. Rwanda has identified urbanization as one of the key pillars for economic growth and transformation. In view of this, it established secondary cities in the various parts of the country to complement the capital city Kigali and satellite cities. Some are even border cities where trade with neighboring countries is expected to spur the economic growth. Facilitating these cities with the basic socio-economic infrastructure through the various urban development schemes enables them to attract people to live and work in those urban areas, enhance their quality of life, and hence support economic development and growth. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as we enter into this week-long event of presentations, discussions, dialogue, networking, and knowledge sharing, I wish to challenge you to look deeply on issues that matter to the world today. I expect the conference to deliberate on the following. 1. Assess the impact of COVID-19 on the global urban agenda and its targets related with economic, social, environmental, and governance aspects in order to guide governments to rethink the understanding of a resilient urbanization strategy. 2. To share the good practices and approaches undertaken in Canada, China, and Africa, including Rwanda, related to management of cities in terms of density, diversity, and mobility, and exchange ideas on the solutions to tackle existing issues. 3. Elaborate comprehensive and practical recommendations aimed at advising cities, especially in Africa, where rapid urbanization is taking place. 4. Identify new partnerships for the effective implementation of these conferences' outcomes and recommendations, including a better understanding of how Canada, China, and African countries can contribute to sustainable and resilient urbanization. Finally, render an immense opportunity to design appropriate policy solutions and interventions that can orient Canada, China, and African countries to sustainable urbanization process in a more integrated, inclusive, and impactful approach. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, allow me to extend my thanks to the organizers of this conference and acknowledge the collaboration and support by ICCCASU Board, UN Habitat, and the University of Ottawa. This shows the importance you attach to the global urban agenda. I thank you once again and wish you fruitful deliberations.
Suzanne Fortier has served as Principal and Vice Chancellor of McGill University since September 2013. Prior to her appointment as Principal, Professor Fortier was President of the Natural Science and Engineering Research Council of Canada. She has held back various academic positions and holds honorary doctorates from Thompson Rivers University, Carleton University, and the University of Glasgow. Professor Fortier currently serves as chair of the World Economic Forum's Global University Leaders Forum and is member of advisory boards in multiple organizations, academic institutions, and councils. Please join me welcoming Suzanne Fortier.
Bonjour, je suis ravie de vous souhaiter la bienvenue à la 4e conférence internationale sur l'urbanisation durable au Canada, en Chine et en Afrique. On behalf of McGill University and the Peter Guo Fu School of Architecture, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all participants in the 4th International Conference on Canadian, Chinese, and African Sustainable Urbanization. McGill is pleased to co-host this event with the United Nations Human Settlements Program, UN Habitat, the University of Ottawa, and Carleton University. This year's conference brings together leading experts from nearly 40 nations to explore the theme of density, diversity, and mobility, the city in an era of cascading risk. This topic is especially timely in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. As you know very well, the pandemic has profoundly affected our rapidly urbanizing world and has transformed how we live, work, and interact with one another. Over the past year and a half, we have learned about resilience and sustainability as well as adaptability, and we have found new ways of bringing people together around a common goal. We have also seen how our increasingly connected and urbanized world demands system-wide approaches to resilience. There are no one-size-fits-all solutions, and these issues cannot be addressed in isolation. As our cities grow in complexity and influence, collaboration between all stakeholders is crucial. This conference, I hope, will give you an opportunity to create new collaborations or to build on existing partnerships that strengthen the resilience of our cities, countries, and the world. Let me welcome and thank, in particular, all the students participating in the conference who have the exciting but challenging role of building forward better our world. Bien que nous devions continuer de nous réunir virtuellement pour l'instant, j'espère néanmoins que nous aurons bientôt l'occasion de vous accueillir en personne sur le campus de l'Université McGill. Je vous souhaite une conférence réussie et des plus intéressantes. Merci.
Jean-Pierre Elong Mbassi is the Secretary General of United Cities and Local Governments of Africa, UCLG, since 2007. UCLG is a global network of cities and local, regional, and metropolitan governments and their associations committed to represent, defend, and amplify the voices of local, regional governments to leave no one and no place behind. Mr. Mbassi, among many other achievements, is the man behind African Cities Summit, the largest ever event of cities, regions, and local communities in Africa, where he oversees the organizations since the first edition in 1998. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Jean-Pierre Elon Mbasi.
Dear participants, I'm grateful that the organizers of ICCCASU 4 have invited UCLG Africa to take part in this conference on density, diversity, and mobility, the city in an era of cascading risk. I am addressing you in my capacity as the Secretary General of the United Cities and Local Government of Africa, UCLG Africa, the umbrella organization and representative of the voice of subnational and local governments on the African continent. We are headquartered in Rabat, Morocco, and we maintain 5 regional offices in Cairo, Egypt for North Africa, in Accra, Ghana for West Africa, in Libreville, Gabon for Central Africa, in Nairobi, Kenya for East Africa, and in Pretoria, South Africa for the Southern Africa region. I'm bringing you the greetings of the Executive Committee and the members of UCLG Africa, and in particular of its President, the Mayor of Libreville. I was asked to reflect on the UCLG Africa approach to governance of African cities. The observation of the dynamics of urbanization in Africa required that we revisit our concept to strive to create a new lexical corpus in which categories such as urban, rural-urban relationships, cities, metropolis, meaning the categories of places, must be replaced by categories referring to the description of the processes of urbanization or their apprehension, which are more and more of the order of movement than the order of the instantaneous. It is indeed necessary to question a concept that can have such different contents from concrete experimentation. Who can indeed maintain that in the name of the urbanization of the planet, one gives the same content to the experience of urbanization process in Africa with its experience in other regions of the world? An example to illustrate this point. It took 100 years for Paris to go from 500,000 inhabitants in 1810 to 1 million inhabitants in 1910. It took Lagos 25 years to do the same between 1950 and 1975. Who can honestly argue that this is the same experience of the urbanization process? The city of Lagos is adding 500,000 people per year. Where in the world today is there the capacity to anticipate and plan in advance for such a large population from one year to the next? It is clear that the process of urbanization underway in Africa vindicates the position of the African Union presented at the United Nations Conference on Human Settlement held in 2016 in Quito, Ecuador, to consider the phenomenon of urbanization as a permanent movement of structural transformation of space under the pressure of social and ecological tensions. The result of which is a double movement of concentration and expansion in a system of human settlement open and in permanent interaction. Seen in this way, the urbanization of Africa calls into question the basic principles around which the virtuous management logics of urbanization have been built as producers of places, namely the density of occupation, physical connectivity allowing the circulation of factors, and the management of mobility. These principles have been the basis of the acknowledged superiority of economies of scale, the priority given to large cities in the management of urbanization because they allow the maximum number of inhabitants to access basic services, or the priority given to city centers over the peripheries, which are rarely integrated into the management of urbanization. The pace of urbanization requires that decision makers are aware that they cannot plan ahead as is happened elsewhere in the world. It is not possible to install in 1 year the infrastructure and equipment for an additional population of this magnitude. Urban expansion and urban sprawl are therefore the only available response to be able to manage the urbanization process in Africa. This is why retrofitting and upgrading of informal settlements should be among the planning approaches for African cities, as well as co-creation of the city with their inhabitants. The new governance should recognize the centrality of the city's periphery, host of the bulk of informal settlement neighborhoods, and main point of contact in the continuous movement of people between all levels of human settlements. To propose a practical response to this situation, UCIG Africa and Slum Dwellers International have launched the Know Your City campaign to facilitate the partnership between slum dwellers and city officials for the management of urbanization with the people. Finally, we observe that the pandemic has affected the most densest areas of our countries. This means that the big cities are also the places of great fragility. In other words, effective management of urbanization means, above all, designing and implementing a system of human settlement that reduces the concentration of risk. This put on the agenda the reflection of the whole intermediate cities and small cities in the management of urbanization. It is to initiate this reflection that UCIG Africa is organizing the 9th edition of the Africity Summit from 26th to 30th April 2022 in Kisumu, Kenya, around the theme of the role of intermediary cities in the implementation of the United Nations Agenda 2030 and the African Union Agenda 2063. Thank you.
Peter Gua Hua Fu is President and Chief Architect at KFS Architects Inc. Canada, Director of KFS Dance and Musical, Professor at the School of Design in Shanghai Jiao Tong University, and Professor of Practice at Peter Gua Hua Fu School of Architecture at McGill University. For 20 years, Mr. Fu has led many urban design projects in Shanghai and St. Petersburg, and has received many awards, such as the top 20 most influential architects in China. Since 2017, McGill University, with a history of 200 years, named its School of Architecture the Peter Hua Fu School of Architecture and invited him as a professor of practice. This year's ICCCASU 4 conference is hosted by the Peter Hua Fu School of Architecture. Please join me welcoming Peter Hua Fu.
Bonjour， 大家好。非常感谢大家给我这么一个机会，在这个非常重要的 conference 上面做一个小小的一个 speech. Thank you so much for everyone for the opportunity to speak at this very important conference. I would like to congratulate the organizer for the successful holding ICCCASU 2021, especially during such a difficult time. I'm glad all of us are able to come together and focus on our common goal, bring positive changes to Africa, to Canada, to China, as ICCCASU did in the past. I was born in China and worked in Canada for many years, and always yearned for the Africa. ICCCASU 2021 is a very personal one for me. Also, as a professor of McGill University, I feel especially so proud that ICCCASU is taking place here in Montreal, in Canada, in McGill University. As we continue into the 21st century, facing challenges such as resource scarcity and climate changes, sustainability is even more crucial for the developed world. I'm looking forward to the sharing of knowledge and experience on this important conference. Wish ICCCASU the very best, and may this conference bring all of us closer toward building a better world. 非常非常感谢大家。我出生在中国上海，也在加拿大工作了许多年。然后非洲是我一直很喜欢的地方，距离上次去非洲已经有大概几年了。我衷心的希望我们的会议能够圆满成功，也衷心希望2年之后我们在非洲再相见，我们在那里共同讨论我们的可持续发展，共同讨论我们共同的主题。非常感谢大家。Thank you so much.
Mari Semyatiki is the interim director of the School of Cities and professor of Geography and Planning at the University of Toronto. Mari's work focuses on delivering large-scale infrastructure projects, evidence-based infrastructure investment decisions, and the effective integration of infrastructure into the fabric of cities. Professor Semyatiki is a highly engaged public scholar with deep commitment into forming public discourse about city building. He has also been instrumental in the success of ICCCASU's participation in the World Urban Forum in Abu Dhabi. Please join me welcoming Mari Semyatiki.
Hello. It's a pleasure to join you today to share some remarks at the opening of the 4th International Conference on Canadian, Chinese, and African Sustainable Urbanization. The theme of this year's conference, Density, Diversity, and Mobility, the City in an Era of Cascading Risk, could not be more timely or more immediate. Indeed, we are in the midst of at least 3 intersecting crises. The COVID-19 pandemic is a public health crisis of epic global proportions. It has tragically killed millions of people worldwide and upended life as we know it. Second, the world is staring down a climate emergency that threatens to make the COVID-19 pandemic look like a dry run when compared to the death, destruction, and disruption that it might bring. Just earlier this month, A heat wave in Canada's west coast killed 700 people in a matter of days, more than during any similar stretch of time in the pandemic. And a forest fire wiped out the entire town of Lytton, British Columbia in just hours, where the forest was tinder dry after temperatures reached 49 degrees Celsius, a new record. Climate change is not something theoretical that is happening elsewhere or way off in the distant future. It is happening here and now. Its devastating effects are being felt today. Third, we are facing a crisis of systemic inequality and racism. Environmental racism sees noxious urban facilities like garbage dumps, highways, and polluting power plants disproportionately located in low-income and racialized communities. Unsafe drinking water plagues Indigenous communities, and vast digital divides exacerbate unequal access to employment and essential services. Unequal policing results in the over-policing for Black, Indigenous, and people of color, combined with a frequent lack of security and safety for these same communities. None of this is new. It has all been obvious to those experiencing it and anyone who cared to look and find out more. Each of these crises are very much urban crises of cascading and interconnected risk. In all cases, the vulnerable have borne the greatest burden from these crises. The majority of those killed in the heat wave on Canada's west coast were elderly and those who are socially isolated. In Canada and many countries around the world, racial and ethnic minorities were far more likely to contract COVID-19 due to their jobs as essential workers outside of the home, overcrowded housing, and disparities in access to healthcare. The pandemic has revealed and accelerated deep-seated inequalities that have been a feature of cities for some time. The impacts of climate change are also deeply uneven between those who can move and those who can't. Heat islands, for instance, are far worse in poor and racialized communities where there are fewer trees and buildings are often poorly insulated. On top of these urban crises, we must overlay the rise of increasing global geopolitical tensions. We have witnessed a run-up in tensions between China and the West. Some are even suggesting we are entering into a new Cold War of strategic competition. The place for free expression and religious freedoms, alongside reconciliation and reparations for past and ongoing wrongs, all of these are national issues that are expressed and playing out at the urban scale. Ideas of density, diversity, and mobility are all being challenged, nationally and locally. The question we must ask is density, diversity, and mobility for whom? While some live in dense walkable neighborhoods with ample green space and a mix of uses with jobs nearby, for others, density actually means overcrowding, and mobility reflects the lack of safe, affordable travel options that are such critical vehicles of opportunity and heightened surveillance while moving around the city. Yet cities are resilient, and people are resilient. This moment of cascading crisis calls for a new way of thinking about city building that responds to the challenges of the day. So where does that leave us as scholars and as city building practitioners? To my mind, it leaves us in a place where our scholarship and our practice is more urgent than ever before. Now is a moment for fearless scholarship that documents the origins and the impacts of the intersecting public health, climate, and crisis of racism and inequality that we now face. And it is a time for fearless city building that places diversity, a clean environment, and a freedom for all as its fundamental right. The time for soothing words and half measures has passed. Now is a moment for hard truths, uncomfortable conversations, and bold actions. With over 200 participants from 39 countries, this forum is an essential venue for exchange to address the grave challenges that we face. I look forward to learning from the dialogues that take place at the conference and the actions that follow. Thank you.
Dr. Hua Cao is a cross-appointed full professor within the Department of Geography, Environment, and Geomatics and the School of International Development and Global Studies at the University of Ottawa in Canada. He specialized in urban studies, population, mobility, and environment from an international perspective throughout his 25 years academic career. Dr. Cao directed various national and international transdisciplinary research and training projects that have received significant funding from Canada, the European Union, China, and Cameroon. He's also written near 100 of articles, chapters, books, reports, while collaborating with academics, professionals, and politicians all over the world. Yet, his most outstanding achievement is the co-founding of ICCCASU in 2015, a joint initiative with the United Nations Human Settlements Program, UN Habitat, and the University of Ottawa, an effort that for the past 6 years has made ICCCASU a reliable, authoritative voice, developing networks among urban researchers and practitioners worldwide. Please join me welcoming Dr. Huhua Cao.
Distinguished guests, honored speakers, colleagues, students, and all others present today, good morning. Chers invités distingués, honorables conférenciers, universitaires et présentateurs, bonjour. 尊敬的各位来宾、学者和参会者，早晨好。On behalf of the organizing committee and in my capacity as co-president of ICCCASU, it is a great pleasure for me to welcome you to the 4th International Conference on Canadian, Chinese, and African Sustainable Urbanization ICCCASU 4. Au nom du comité organisateur, j'ai le plaisir de souhaiter une chaleureuse bienvenue à tous les participants à la 4e conférence internationale sur l'urbanisation durable au Canada, en Chine et en Afrique. 我很高兴代表组委会向参加第4届中加非可持续城市化国际论坛的所有与会者表示最热烈的欢迎。This conference is taking place in the context of a global COVID-19 pandemic. In the past 16 months, the pandemic has shined a bright light on the many challenges of sustainable urbanization, particularly in rapidly urbanizing areas of the world. The health crisis has polarized economics and transformed how we live, work, and related to one another. Attempts to contain the virus expose the differences, strengths, and weaknesses of local, national, and international governments, as well as the fragility of the networks that support governance systems. La pandémie a gravi les disparités économiques et sociales existantes, affectant de manière disproportionnée les pauvres, soulève des questions sur la vie privée, la sécurité, la forme de l'environnement bâti. Il a intensifié les menaces persistantes pour le bien-être de la communauté, y compris le changement climatique. At the same time, the COVID-19 crisis has presented us with a critical opportunity to re-examine, rethink our cities. Only those capable of managing multiple risks can offer the protection and provide the well-being we need and desire. Without the proper preparedness, health crisis, climate change, and increased social cultural diversity will exacerbate xenophobia, poverty, and inequality, intensifying social economic instability, making us all more vulnerable. Municipal governments now know that they need to find better ways to respond to and accommodate the increasing social and cultural diversity within their cities. What can be learned by sharing experiences from China with its massive migrant flows and the local diversities, from Africa with hundreds of peoples and linguistic groups, and from Canada, which is increasingly dependent on foreign immigration and experiencing similar pressures related to urban density and quality of life. Our increasingly connected and urbanized world demands system-wide approaches to urban management. The theme of ICCCASU 4 are consistent with the call published in UN Habitat's 2020 World Cities Report, highlighting the opportunities and challenges associated with sustainable urbanization in the post-pandemic era. The conference has been designed to provide a global forum for the creation of innovative and creative solutions for a more equitable, safe, and sustainable recovery from the pandemic, improve the quality of life for all. As rapid urbanization is taking place mainly in China and Africa, this conference will focus on those regions, exploring context-specific strategies and realistic solutions. Bien que les participants soient en ligne et non présents à Montréal comme prévu initialement, l'ICCCASU 4 est une excellente occasion pour le Canada de jouer un rôle de leader mondial en présentant son histoire de développement urbain et réunissant des décideurs d'établissements universitaires et des praticiens du monde entier pour trouver des solutions pour une approche plus saine et plus juste de l'urbanisation mondiale. We are very pleased to welcome experts from Latin America and the Caribbean to this conference and to learn from their dynamic and unique experiences with urbanization. We will continue our efforts to include more regions in future ICCCASU dialogues. Over the next 4 days, more than 200 participants from 39 countries and regions will share their knowledge and best practices to help us to diagnose common challenges to effective and prosperous urbanization in our planning for a more resilient future. We are inspired by the devoted work of all those for whom building sustainable, equitable cities for all is not only an ideal, but an impératif. Au cours des 4 prochains jours, plus de 200 participants venant de 39 pays et régions partageront leurs connaissances et leurs meilleures pratiques pour nous aider à relever les défis communs d'une urbanisation efficace et prospère à l'avenir. Nous sommes inspirés par le travail acharné de tous ceux pour construire des villes durables et équitables. Pour tout n'est pas seulement un idéal, mais un impératif. J'aimerais profiter de cette occasion spéciale pour remercier le Conseil de recherche en sciences humaines du Canada pour son soutien financier. ICCCASU 4 est la seule conférence parrainée par l'ONU au Canada qui réexaminait les villes dans le contexte post-COVID-19. It is absolutely crucial that we acknowledge our many volunteers here in Canada as well as in China, Africa, and other regions in the world. They have contributed their time, wisdom, and experience to bring ICCCASU to this stage. In fact, the international ICCCASU team is composed of dedicated volunteers. We are extremely proud of our team, especially in light of the considerable challenges the team has negotiated and the heavy workloads so many have managed while working to make this conference a success. A special thanks to our distinguished guests for their opening remarks, participation in the dialogues, and keynote presentations. I know that all of you have fully packed schedules. Your presence has added enormous value to ICCCASU 4. Likewise, to each of the panelists, speaks local and international, for their interest and willingness to participate at such a difficult time. Merci tous d'avoir participé à cette conférence, consacrer votre temps précieux et votre talent à la réussite de l'ICCASU 4 et plus largement à la cause du développement urbain durable. Nous vous souhaitons des bonnes discussions et des débats sains. 感谢大家来参加这次大会，为中加非城市论坛的成功以及更广泛的可持续城市发展事业奉献宝贵的时间和智慧。Thank you, merci， 谢谢大家。
Chers participants, distingués invités, nous avons eu l'honneur d'écouter attentivement les orateurs qui sont passés devant nous, près d'une dizaine on dirait, et il en sort des interventions ce qui suit. Comme nous le savons tous, la pandémie mondiale Covid-19 a profondément affecté notre monde qui s'urbanise rapidement. Comment les urbanistes, les gouvernements nationaux et locaux, les chercheurs, les dirigeants communautaires et les praticiens du secteur privé doivent-ils coordonner les efforts pour rendre nos villes plus résistantes et résilientes aux risques? Notre monde, de plus en plus connecté et urbanisé, exige une approche systémique. C'est ce que nous avons retenu. Les problèmes ne peuvent plus être traités de manière isolée à mesure que nos villes gagnent de l'importance et en influence. La coordination entre les différents niveaux de gouvernement est essentielle pour équilibrer la densité, la diversité et donc la mobilité. Merci à chacun des intervenants de cette cérémonie d'ouverture que nous venons d'écouter attentivement pour leur introduction perspicace. Vous avez lancé cette importante conversation et vous nous avez préparé pour les 4 prochains jours dans cette conférence qui vise à explorer les concepts de densité, de diversité et de mobilité, donc, comme je le disais tantôt, des villes à l'ère des risques en cascade. Les 4 prochains jours comprendront au total 40 événements, notamment les événements structurés autour de 2 séances d'ouverture, 2 dialogues, 6 domaines thématiques, chacun avec ses propres, n'est-ce pas, panels, 5 panels spéciaux, une table ronde, un événement spécial. Pour plus de détails, veuillez consulter le document de procédure de la conférence disponible dans le site web de notre conférence, ICCCASU 4. L'événement suivant est notre première session d'ouverture et il commencera à 10h, heure du Canada. Profitez de cet instant, profitez des jours que nous aurons ensemble pour donc mieux comprendre comment nous pouvons donc faire face aux risques en cascade à travers le monde. Merci.
As we are all well aware, the global COVID-19 pandemic has profoundly affected a rapidly urbanizing world. How should urban planners, national and local governments, researchers, community leaders, and private sector practitioners coordinate efforts to make our cities more risk resilient? Our increasingly connected and urbanized world demands a system-wide approach. Issues can no longer be addressed in isolation. As our cities grow in importance and influence, coordination between levels of government is crucial to balancing density, diversity, and mobility. Thank you to each and every one of the speakers of the opening ceremony for your insightful introductions. You have initiated this important conversation and prepared us for the next 4 days of this conference, which aims at exploring density, diversity, and mobility, the city in an area of cascading risks. The next 4 days will have a total of 40 events, which will include 2 keynote sessions, 2 dialogues, 6 thematic areas and each with its own panels, 5 special panels, 1 roundtable, and 1 special event. Please review the conference proceedings document available on the conference website for more details. Our following event is our first keynote session and will start at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Please enjoy the event.